Welcome to In the Furnace, where we talk about what's hot in music, and 2017 was an amazing year for pop music. And I don't want to use the term amazing lightly, because there were just so many songs this year that I absolutely loved, and I'm gonna have a blast doing my best list. But even with the best of years, there still comes a handful of some not-so-great songs. Because I spent a lot of time with the charts this year and tried to develop a meaningful connection with every single song that became a hit, there weren't that many songs that I really found that I outright hated this year. It just didn't really happen. In fact, most of the songs that made the worst list this year wouldn't have even been contenders last year. That's just how much improvement there was across the board. And that really is a testament to how strong 2017 was. I did have some difficulty assembling this list, but the songs presented themselves to me fairly clearly, and I can feel very confident that these are the worst hits of the year. So without further ado, let's dive right into them. We're counting down the top 10 worst hit songs of 2017. Number 10. Now, it seems to be that when making their year-end lists, each critic sort of makes their video at a different time, which can result in different songs making their list. And there are a couple songs that made my worst list this year that were on a couple people's lists last year, and that is because I try to follow the year-end Hot 100 each year, or at least the projection of the year-end Hot 100, and some other people do not abide to that rule, and that is perfectly okay. It just means that some songs that you thought we were over and done with last year are making the list this year. And this song is one of them. But frankly, this song has been forgotten about for so long that I think it deserves just one more chance for it to be torn into before we forget it altogether for the rest of our lives, shall we?
Am I out of my head? Am I out of my mind? If you only knew the bad things I like.
Now, the problems in this song are fairly straightforward. For one, you have the production that's just this suffocating piano line that sounds way too much like Pachelbel's Canon to be comfortable. You have Camila Cabello's shrieking chorus that is just not a great use of her vocal talents at all. She's done way better than this. And then there's Machine Gun Kelly's bars, which are just far from good. So many disgusting lines and sexual references that aren't anywhere close to comfortable. To this day, I still find the lines, "scars on my body so I can take you wherever," incredibly questionable. Like, what exactly does he mean by that? Is he referring to hickeys? Is he referring to BDSM? Or is this really an abusive relationship and we let a song about an abusive relationship hit the top 5? Frankly, I'm hoping it's the former, but either way, this subject matter has never really made me comfortable, and the fact that it became so big is really interesting. If anything, the closest comparison I can draw to this song is 50 Shades of Grey, with its saccharine presentation and yet just horrible storyline throughout. And yet the worst part of his delivery when he says those lines about scars on the body is how he sings it and raps it at the same time. They take those two vocal tracks and put them on top of each other, and so it almost sounds like some weird pseudo-harmonization that doesn't remotely work. I suppose maybe there is an instance where you can record singing on top of rapping, like maybe In the End by Linkin Park, but the effect here is far from that. Very far. There's a reason why Machine Gun Kelly's follow-up singles never took him anywhere. It's because they offered the same sort of bland forgettableness that songs like this do, without any of the sexual edge to make it appealing to teens. And as for Camila Cabello, she has Havana. She's fine. There's a reason why people forgot about this song for the last couple of months, and really it's just for the better. Number 9. This is another song that I think the public consciousness just completely forgot about, and it's really not hard to see why. I mean, for one thing, it's Maroon 5 doing Tropical House.
I don't wanna know who's taking you home, home, and loving you so.
This is one of the last hits of the Tropical House boom, and frankly, good riddance. It's incredibly underweight, incredibly watery, unimpactful synth lines. Just nothing really of substance here. I suppose I can give Adam Levine some credit for staying in his lower range here, and the guitars throughout the track, they aren't bad at all. They are a nice touch. But then we get to the subject matter, and it's just so unbelievably pissy and uncalled for. Essentially, it's about a breakup that went badly, and Adam is just lamenting over this girl, but his delivery is so emotionless and passionless that he doesn't even seem invested in it at all. He's just kind of wallowing in self-pity for no reason than self-flagellance. And really, I fail to see how that's an appealing look on him or anybody else. And yet, the reason why this song made this list is not even because of Maroon 5. It's because of Kendrick Lamar. Considering that in 2015 he put out To Pimp a Butterfly, one of the best albums of all time, hands down. It's a great hip-hop record that really touches on some great topics of racial division in America, as well as in his own communities. And then he would later go on the year after to put out Damn, a not as great but also very insightful record contrasting wickedness and weakness in his life and his submittance to God. The fact that he can put out a verse like this is embarrassing. Do you like this? Touch your poo-ya like this? What are you doing, man? If you thought Adam's delivery was emotionless on this song, then Kendrick, he's asleep. I've heard more lively performances from 21 Savage this year, and that guy's known for being boring in his delivery. So ultimately, at the end of the day, this song is just a waste of time. It offers nothing rewarding from listening to it. It's essentially background noise of the lowest common denominator and isn't worth anyone's time or listen. Number 8. 2017 has been an interesting year given that One Direction is now on hiatus and all of the individual members are pursuing their own careers. And we saw hits from almost every member this year. Unfortunately, Louis was not able to cross over far enough with his single Back to You, which easily would have made my best list had it done so, but the other members all had a fair shot and all had admirable amounts of success. Unfortunately, the quality wasn't all there. While I was fairly on board with Niall's singles, both This Town and Slow Hands are fairly enjoyable tunes, I never really loved Harry Styles' Sign of the Times or Zayn's I Don't Want to Live Forever, which were both fairly big this year as well. And yet, that leaves us with Liam Payne, who just so happened to make one of the worst hit songs of this year.
You know I've been taking some time and I've been keeping to myself.
If I were to describe this song in one sentence, it would be that this is the Rack City of 2017. And I'm willing to bet you that if you're watching this video, you're thinking, hey, I've thought of that, or hey, I've heard that before. And I mean, the comparisons just kind of create themselves, don't they? You got a minimalistic bassline percussion that doesn't do anything, little sense of progression, and just unenjoyable deliveries. Now, I will give this song a little bit of credit for its lyrics. They aren't terrible in the verses, and there is some interesting ideas going on there. But then we get to the pre-chorus where he has to call out the fact that he used to be in 1D, but now he's out free, which, dude, the group is supposedly on hiatus. You're really shattering that illusion really quickly. But really where the song falls apart for me is in the chorus, where any hints of romance or innocence in the relationship is just replaced with, hey girl, come and strip that down for me. And it just becomes incredibly sleazy, incredibly fast, and it really just doesn't help that we have the loads of gain vocals in the background as if this is supposed to be some sort of sleazy hip-hop joint. But really where this song crossed over from bad to awful territory is in the post-chorus, where we get that pitch-shifted vocal going like, strip that down, girl. It doesn't fit. It doesn't remotely fit, and it's just incredibly awkward. The song could have avoided this list had it not had that one segment, to be honest with you. But alas, it is there, and it makes up a considerable chunk of the song. That's more than I can say for the guest artists on this, Quavo, and while Migos did have a fairly successful 2017, the quality of their verses differed across different songs, and this is an example of Quavo phoning it in. I can't be bothered to tell you a single line in his verse. I don't remember any of them, except the first line where he drops the title of the song because, of course he does, he's Quavo. But really, I think the amazing thing is that the song didn't end up any worse, considering that the production does like what Work From Home by Fifth Harmony does, which just has all of the instruments playing the same notes at different octaves. The fact that this turned out better than that song, it does speak a bit of volume. That all being said, I am interested in where Liam will be heading in 2018. He does still have a lot of potential. He could very well end up being the Justin Timberlake of the group. He's got a similar vocal style, so we'll just see where he goes from here, but I'm just hoping that he does not put out more of this. Number 7. There were a lot of songs this year that got big off of commercials, mainly Believer by Imagine Dragons, Thunder by Imagine Dragons, and Feel It Still by Portugal the Man. And while all of these songs do vary in quality, they definitely have that commercial sound. They're instantly catchy and big the ability for commercials to be able to stand out, especially movie trailers in the case of Believer. But there was one song that barely became a hit this year, and it was all because it was featured in an Apple commercial, and it doesn't even fit that sort of vibe at all. And even if it did, it wouldn't excuse the fact that this song is absolutely garbage. I can support some minimalism in music, and while I just hated on Strip That Down for being a bit minimalistic, and I hated on Gold by Kiara last year for similar reasons, that song's actually grown on me. But the reason why this song doesn't really hit the mark for me is because of the way it goes about its minimalism. I can appreciate the piano line that is featured in this song. When the song opened up, it was pleasant. The fact that it repeated for the entire song made it get kind of old, like, really fast. So ultimately, when an artist comes up with a good musical idea, the best thing to do is to find a way to add a natural progression to it, to let other things happen and build a full painting with the song, if that makes any sense. But what Marian Hill do is just add a bunch of percussion and noises, and they don't do anything remotely interesting with the piano line. I mean, there's the chorus or drop, whatever you want to call it, where the percussion comes in with this very basic and loud hi-hat pattern, and the vocals being manipulated to just say the word down over and over again at different pitches, and it just sounds incredibly grating to me. And then when the second verse hits, there was so much opportunity to add something else, maybe some more bass, maybe another synth line or something like that, but instead they add the sound of a pen clicking. It is there in the second verse, and it's just one of the most absolutely baffling things I have heard in a pop song. You could make the argument that it's an interesting form of experimentation, but it's literally only there for 2 seconds and serves no progression to the song whatsoever. It's just kind of there. And to think I haven't even talked about the content yet, which there's really not much to speak of. It's essentially just asking someone, hey, are you down to go dancing? Are you down? 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 And the vocals on this thing are really soft. They're not really dynamic at all. I mean, the most dynamic thing that happens to them is their producer taking her voice, saying the word down on a C pitch, and then queuing it up to a keyboard and just going basically just diddling around on the keyboard with it. I can at least appreciate the fact that Marian Hill probably had fun making this song, but I certainly do not have fun listening to it, and I'm baffled that it became as big as it did off of a commercial for Apple earbuds. What are these things called? Oh, earbuds! Got it. Apple earbuds. So yeah, not a very good song. Next. Number 6. So last year on my 2016 worst list, I put on Exchange by Bryson Tiller at number 10. And in retrospect, that was a mistake. The song wasn't really bad at all. I mean, I just happened to have a momentary annoyance with that sample in it and just decided, hey, you know, this song should be on the worst list. I really can't stand that sample. And in retrospect, I've revisited that song and it really doesn't get to me anymore. I feel that I was really just overreacting in that moment, and it wouldn't have been on the worst list if I made it at literally any other time of the year. That being said, it wasn't the only song released in the past couple of years to use that sample, and the one that became a hit this year is far, far worse. And it's all because of J. Cole.
Hey, put a finger in the sky if you want it, nigga. Hey, put 2 fingers in the sky if you want it.
Now, I made it incredibly clear in my worst list last year that I don't like songs about stealing other people's romantic partners, especially when there's not really any foundation for why you should be doing it other than you want them, and it's not that you're concerned for them because they're in a bad relationship or anything like that. It's just because you see them and you want them. And J. Cole is known for being a clever wordsmith and having some bars that can make you think, man. I mean, he has his dedicated fan base. He went platinum with no features. You guys all know how J. Cole is. But the fact of the matter is, on this song, all that he's doing is trying to justify stealing someone else's girl, and he just has all of these lines trying to do it, and none of them really connect with me. And how could they? It's such a messed up narrative. He chooses to open and end the song with like, "It put a finger in the sky if you want her," and he says it in one of the most exasperated voices I've ever heard. It's easily one of the most grating parts of the entire We Are End list. easily. Ultimately, my problem with the J. Cole songs I've heard is that he doesn't know when to stop. This song and No Role Models both have like 3 or 4 verses, as well as the intros and outros and the hooks and all that stuff, and it's like, we get your point, dude. You can stop at any time. And especially when the point is something this unpleasant, there's really no reason why I should be wasting my time on this song. My deepest apologies to Bryson Tiller for putting his song on a worst list for a sample, because J. Cole went and proved that that sample could be the best part of a song. Skip this trash and find some lyrical hip-hop that actually means something for once, and not just uses clever wordplay as an excuse to commit horrible things. Number 5. This next song should not be surprising to any of you. If anything, you're going to be surprised that it wasn't even higher, considering how throughout the entirety of 2017, I was speaking to how awful this song is. Frankly, the only real crime to me is that this was one of the biggest hits of the year, if not the biggest, and a lot of people still love it, and I have no idea why. So I guess I should put my final nail in the coffin and establish once and for all why I hate this song.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do.
Admittedly, this song opens with potential. The synth line that comes in isn't bad. The percussion that falls in afterwards, while I do still think it sounds kind of like a fax machine or a copier, it's not awful. It could work in the sense that it leads to something bigger. It is the opening of a track so that it can progress later. Ed Sheeran starts singing his first verse over it, and it's not bad. He's meeting this girl at the bar and striking up a conversation, and it seems to be a bit of a typical little love tale. It's a bit run-of-the-mill, but nothing horrible. But then the pre-chorus hits, he starts dropping cringy lines like, "Your love was handmade for somebody like me," and the instrumental doesn't change at all. There's no progression there. Then when the first chorus hits, again, no progression. Except now in the lyrics, he's singing about how much he loves the girl for her body and not her actual personality, which is what he spent the whole verse focusing on in the first place. Ultimately, I think the problem with this song is that Ed Sheeran wasn't really meant to do songs about sex. I mean, there obviously can be a place for songs about sex in the mainstream, and I don't hate a song inherently for being about that, but clearly this is a song disguised as a song about sex, while the verses just waste their time on this narrative that doesn't really go anywhere and is kind of depressing to follow along to. And as for later progression of the production in the song, we do get some actual snares in the post-chorus, as well as this really weird synth that sounds slightly out of key. It's very awkward. As well as a little flimsy guitar line that comes in the second chorus, and then the acoustic guitar part in the bridge. It's okay, I guess. I just wish that that sort of stuff could have come sooner to lead to something even bigger towards the end. Really, I've just lost most of my energy to be mad at this song. I just feel like it was a huge miscalculation on Ed's part and a huge misfire. The fact that Ed is still making hits after this, and that this song was as big as it is, was merely a stroke of luck. This song is pretty much the last of the tropical house wave, and for good reason. I'm glad that Ed decided afterwards to go stick to more of his roots with songs like Castle on the Hill and Perfect, which, while they're not great songs by any means, they're much more on the right track than this ever was. And hopefully, now that I've said this piece, I never have to talk about this Forsaken song ever again. Number 4. This is another song that hasn't been talked or thought about in a long time, and I had to debate with myself whether it was worth putting on a worse list. But frankly, given its quality, given the circumstances which brought it to be a hit, I think it was worth putting on the list. And now it's been almost a year since the death of Vine, and songs like this can serve as a reminder that Vine is not missed at all.
Walked in this party and these girls looking at me. Skinny jeans on and you know my head nappy.
In theory, this song really isn't that bad. I mean, just a couple of teenage boys deciding that they want to make a song, so they find an instrumental of a song they like online, in this case, Nuck If You Buck, and they just come up with their own little raps and reference some other dance moves, and bam, you have a song. The part that gets to me is that this song became a top 5 hit on Billboard and actually led to these two no-names being in the spotlight, even if momentarily. I mean, who remembers them anymore? And supposedly this song was made in like 20 minutes, and it really shows, considering that Zayon McCall flubs nearly all of his rhymes, and Zay Hilfiger doesn't even seem to be trying. He's just mostly spending most of his time just saying, hey, hey, hey. Honestly, if this song didn't steal its beat and didn't have that awful grandma skit at the beginning, I probably could have just relegated this to the dishonorable mentions, but those two aspects really do kind of take the crap cake for me. If there's one thing that I just really have trouble supporting in music, it's plagiarism and samples without much or any alteration. And taking a beat and bumping it up one semitone is not enough of an alteration to consider it a sample. If a song like this was made by two well-established artists, it would easily be the worst hit of its year. But since it was just made by some two teenage boys having fun, I really can't get that angry at it at the end of the day. But it's still terrible and definitely not worth a listen. Number 3. When I did that top 20 video with Rose, I let her do most of the talking on this song, and I feel like I didn't really get to touch on why exactly this is such a horrible hit. And you know, it's really just a shame that it had to come to this point. I mean, the artist who made this song, he had been floating around in the rap world for a while, collaborating with different artists and slowly making a name for himself, only to break out last year because of a hit where he talks about talking to girls in the DMs. Literally. And since he was able to bring on Nicki Minaj for a remix to make that song a hit, he figured, hey, why don't I make another, even worse song, bring back Nicki Minaj, and maybe it'll get even bigger. And the sad part is, he was right.
I tell all my hoes, rake it up, break it down, bag it up.
In a year where Mike Will Made It produced such beats as Humble and DNA by Kendrick Lamar and Black Beatles by Ray Shremmerd, the fact that he thought this was acceptable for the masses is insulting. You got your standard trap percussion, this ugly bass gurgle, and then some hints of some like little synths that really sound like they belonged in rap hits from 10 years ago that no one looks back on fondly. Then you have Yo Gotti's hook, where he has one of the most annoying vocal deliveries I've ever heard from the guy. Seriously, what is he doing there? And you know, his first verse is actually kind of mildly humorous in some of the lines that he has. I mean, the fact that he's like, God forgive me because I prayed for this. It's like, okay, I can give him some hilarity points for a couple bars in this verse. But then we get Nicki Minaj, and this song just sinks even deeper into its grave. Many people have hated on the fact that she rhymes China with itself many times, and then people are responding with, well, it's because she does internal rhyming, and that's the point. Which is okay, but she rhymes race with wraith with race. Which, in my opinion, that's not really a passable sort of line there. If she rhymed like race with pace with space, then maybe I could accept that, but race twice and then wraith? But that doesn't cut it. That doesn't remotely cut it. And really, her verse just only goes downhill from there, talking about doing splits on guys' faces and just really annoying voices that makes me wish that she was actually Roman Polanski on this song, even though it's a different sort of annoying voice. In all truth, it's probably the worst Nicki Minaj verse I've ever heard, and that's really saying something, because holy crap, this is really terrible. If the song had ended there, it probably would have just barely made the worst list. But what brought it up to this far was Yo Gotti's second verse, which drags the song on to over 4.5 minutes and is just filled with utter crap lines. For one, there's a lot of blatant sexism in this verse, with him telling guys like, you should bleed once a month because that's what these bitches do, and just, Then we have the sample of Too Short saying the word bitch, which, I mean, can be initially funny when first hearing the song, but gets really old really fast and just kind of shows some lack of creativity on Yo Gotti's part. And then he proceeds to assault us with just so many banal lines that it's a miracle that one of the better ones is when he calls someone a cougar for being an old hater, even though that's not even what the word cougar means. At least Down in the DM had a bit of a catchy beat and some silly memorable lyrics that made it tolerable, but this has nothing, this is worthless, just a waste of space on the Hot 100, and I'm hoping that Yo Gotti and Nicki Minaj don't collab again so that I don't have to deal with more of their stupid hit songs. Number 2. When I was in the process of making this list, I was so certain that this song was going to be my number 1. I had known it for a while that this song was just something truly awful, truly lazy, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't able to be my number 1. But hey, number 2 is pretty close, and trust me, it is well deserved. and let me explain why.
Say, hey, hey, now, baby.
To me, this song truly sums up what's wrong with a lot of pop music in 2017. For one, you have the absolutely lazy lyrics, simply repeating words over and over again to fill up space, such that there's probably not even more than 10 unique words in this entire song. And then you have the chorus, which is half just the word ooh, which, like, okay. And then we get a guest feature from SZA, who, while she's not my favorite current up-and-coming singer, she is probably the best part of this song. She does provide some solid vocals here. But it's not like Maroon 5 gave her any lyrics worth working with in the first place, because holy crap, these are just really bad lyrics. I could probably write an essay on why the line, say, hey now, baby, is absolutely meaningless. Just pure meaningless. Ultimately, what proposed this song to hate-level territory for me is the fact that it's incredibly lazy and uninventive in the production. That bass line that you hear in the chorus was almost directly sampled from a song from last year, Sexual by Naked featuring Dio. And believe me, I was not a fan of that song by any stretch. I found the bass weak, and the vocals were absolutely irritating. Fortunately for us, Maroon 5 actually replayed the bass line themselves instead of just directly lifting it, but then when they use it, they don't do much else with the song. There's really not many other elements to speak of. And as a byproduct of that, it just comes across as incredibly lazy. Like, they didn't know what to do with the song besides just have this catchy little bass sample do all the work for them. And truthfully, it's not even that great of a bass line. I mean, it's okay at first, but it really just doesn't hold up with repeated listens, at least for me. When considering the structure of this song and just how I feel about it overall, it just feels like a lesser, weaker version of No Promises by Cheat Codes, which was already a weird song to begin with. So the fact that we have this just feels like a waste of time, not really something I need in my life. The worst of 2017 pop music brought us repetition, laziness, and just an overall sense of boringness, and this is why this song made it so high and was going to be my number one, because I felt that it truly encapsulated what made this year awful. But there was one song that might have just done it better, even in a more cultural sort of way. But we will get to why after we take a look at some dishonorable mentions.
Percocet, Miley Percocet.
If we're gonna give Future any more hits, can they have beats that aren't this repetitive and boring?
Turn it up, it's your favorite song. Dance, dance, dance to the distortion.
This is one of the messiest, preachiest songs that we had this year. Frankly, I'm surprised it even made the year-end list. But, you know, it's not the worst thing ever. The production's okay enough, and Skip Marley is kind of adorable in how much he doesn't fit on this.
If you're gonna let me down, gently, don't pretend that you don't want me.
What the heck happened here, Adele? This is like her worst vocal performance I've ever heard, and the crashes and just overall production in this chorus are incredibly messy. Just complete misfire on her part.
Slippery, whoa, excuse me, please me, please.
2017 was an incredible year for Migos, and they actually did make a lot of enjoyable music. This was probably the worst of the songs that they made. Just unpleasant all around.
In case you didn't know, baby, I'm crazy about you.
My favorite country songs are songs that dare to do something a little bit different, kind of defy some norms, or do something incredibly catchy or memorable. And this song is just the definition of cookie-cutter country that's incredibly cute for its own good, and I just have trouble buying any of it. It's just something that makes my skin crawl when I listen to it, and it's not a pleasant feeling at all.
But stay low.
This song just barely missed the list, and I kind of wish it made it, because I know I'm very much in the minority in hating this song, and there's a lot I have to say about it, so I'll just sum it up like this. It sounds broken. Nothing about the production fits together, and the synth tones are just completely off. I'll leave it at that for now. That seems good. And now, we have arrived. The worst hit song of 2017. Number 1. Now, to many people, 2016 was the year of celebrity deaths. A bunch of people that have inspired us and have been close to us slowly dying off one by one at speeds that just felt too fast to comprehend, losing all sorts of legends from David Bowie to Prince and so on and so forth. In contrast to that, 2017 has been the year of outing people for sexual assault. An incredibly serious topic, and frankly, I am disgusted that just so many guys have committed this, and I'm happy that it's being put to the spotlight right now, because we really need to be aware about these issues and make sure they don't happen in the future. And the fact that this sort of cultural shift has been happening to making people more accountable of their actions makes it so confusing that there have been so many rappers this year that have been gaining notability and success for being horrible people. We have had multiple rappers get known and get charting and even hit songs because they got known for some of the terrible things they did, and it was those terrible things that really broke them through to the mainstream. And frankly, this is a trend that needs to stop. It's frankly baffling how many rappers this has been happening to, and I wish that we just didn't have to deal with that. Now, ultimately, the worst example of this is probably The Race by Tay-K, a song where Tay-K pretty much admits to the murder that he has committed and how he's still on the run from the police, which managed to actually sustain a decent chart run and is absolutely disgusting. There was one song in this sort of vein that became a top 10 hit, and while I had told myself for a while, it's not that bad, it's not that bad, ultimately, I just knew I had to put it at number 1 for so many reasons. It's all thanks to Kodak Black. Now, in my top 20 ranking video back in the spring, I was careful to separate the art from the artist in the circumstance of this song, because I felt that to give a song a fair assessment, you have to be able to separate the person who did the crimes from the actual music itself. But one thing I've come to realize over time is that that sort of argument goes out the window when the artist embeds enough of their self into the lyrics. And essentially the whole basis of the chorus, which is reinforced by the music video, is that Kodak Black is wanted in the jails because of his race and not because of any of the crimes he's actually committed. To be accused of rape, he's been locked up on various other charges, but no, it's just the American system trying to get him down for his race. And the lyrics in the verses don't make the situation any better, just worse. Talking about how he needs his girl to cooperate with him and come over whenever he's horny. It's just incredibly controlling and manipulative to any of the girls he's talking to in this song. The rest of the lyrics are just typical gang violence or whatever, not really anything too notable, but the fact that the chorus, which is the main focus of the song, talking about how they want to see him in the penitentiary locked up for being a black man, takes up most of the song. It's just repeated so much with that awful vocal melody. Don't want to see you winning. It's one of the most painful vocal deliveries of the entire year. And all of my complaints about the beat that I said back in the spring, they still stand very much so. The fact that they shoved that awful MIDI guitar line in 3/4 time into the rest of the beat, which is in 4/4, gives me a headache. The awful rhythmic clashing of the kick drum, which is too loud to begin with, and the 808, which is way too quiet, just forms this really awkward effect in the song, and doesn't give this song a strong foundational presence whatsoever. And don't even get me started on the flute line, which is just a completely broken mess, easily the worst flute that Metro Boomin has ever worked with. At the end of the day, this song is just the worst of all possible worlds. The worst of Metro Boomin, the worst of Kodak Black, and just the worst of what 2017 pop music had to offer. I know that we have a lot of rappers who tend to talk about a lot of terrible topics, but usually they're for show or for some sort of shock value. But when you're bringing your personal life and your personal baggage, talking about how awful you are and trying to twist the script into your music, it just doesn't fly. But at this point, what's done is done. America made this song a hit, and there are so many more rappers who have done arguably even worse things than him that are gaining notability. So we may not be done with this cycle anytime soon, but for now, I feel it's safe to say that Tunnel Vision by Kodak Black is the worst hit song of 2017. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, feel free to hit the like button or subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw, then feel free to leave a dislike, but either way, please leave a comment letting me know what you thought. Man, this video was a long time coming, and I've just been preparing for it so much throughout the year. I've been so excited to do this. Honestly, I think this turned out pretty well, but ultimately, you're not me, and you're gonna have different thoughts than me, which is why I'd love it if you leave a comment. If this is your first time coming to my channel or seeing my face, then welcome. I'm so glad you watched. Even if you didn't like it, just I appreciate the fact that you managed to stumble across me. I'm Matt. You've been watching In the Furnace, and take care until the best list.
Key lane while you walking, you know that it's on the